Hi everyone, this is Haron Wangereka, Android engineer at Apollo Agriculture, and today I'm going to walk you through Firebase and how you can use Firebase to solve some of the common problems in your Android apps. Uh, just a brief introduction about Firebase. It's a suite of tools that help developers build and manage mobile and web apps. So it means if you're a mobile app, mobile app developer, you can be able to leverage on Firebase uh, to do some of the things like storage, cloud messaging, and all that. And if you're also like a web developer, you can also be able to use Firebase for the same purposes. So it cuts across both mobile and web apps, so you can be able to use in both situations. And for today, since I'm an Android engineer, I'm mostly going to focus on the Android side of things. I have like a sample project just to showcase some of the things that I work on with Firebase and how you can also use it to automate some of the stuff. Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen here so that I can show you the project that I'm referring to. So I have this project, and the very first things, once you want to use Firebase is for an Android project, you want to set up the dependencies for your app. Briefly walk you through how to set up the Firebase dependencies on an Android project. So this project uses the versions catalog, which is a way of just defining all your all your dependencies in one place, and then you can be able to use them all across your Gradle files. And you can be able to see the first thing, we have the Firebase bill of materials, which defines the versions of Firebase that you're going to use. And then for this project, I'm going to add analytics and Crashlytics to begin with. And along the way, I'm also going to show you how to use remote config and also UI out, Firebase UI out to use authentication. So once you add the versions, inside this block where you define your libraries is where you come and define the libraries that you're going to use. And you can be able to see we have the analytics here. I define the analytics library and then the Crashlytics one. And once I added them to this file, this is called the libs.version. So where you define all your libraries and dependencies. And again, you come here to the dependencies of your app, and you can be able to, one, specify the Firebase bill of materials, and then add your analytics and Crashlytics library. So the Crashlytics one, I think this is it's a very commonly used library where you want to be able to get crashes of your app. When you're getting crashes in the app, this is the app that you use. This is the library that you use. And once you deploy the app in Play Store, you can be able to automatically get the crash reports and all that without you having to run the app on the user's device and all that. With that, I'm just going to force like a crash in this main activity here. Let me just comment out this so that we can be able to see. If you just throw like a runtime exception. And then I'm just going to name it crash 2 because I had already used like the test crash 1. And then just running your app, you can be able to see the crashes on this other end. So just a minute. Yes, as it is running. So the thing is, over the years, has improved like the Crashlytics tool a lot. So you can actually be able to, one, the setup that I was describing, how to add the dependencies and all that, inside your Android Studio in the tools sections, you can just be able to, once you go to tools, I think you cannot be able to see the pop-up, but if you go to tools, you'll see like a Firebase option, which will open this interface right here. And on this interface, so I think the app just run. And then, yeah, the app crashes immediately because we have this block here that crashes the app. So I was trying to explain the Firebase configurations. So inside Android Studio, you can also be able to quickly set up all the other tool SDKs and libraries that Firebase has, because as I said, it's a suite of tools that help developers to manage and build apps. So you can be able to, for example, see the analytics, and then once you expand it, you can be able to see the get started. You can actually even be able to connect your Firebase project inside Android Studio and then add the SDK to your app. Once you click this bit, it normally shows you the dependency that you're supposed to add, like a pop-up dialog. And then all the things that you are supposed to note as you are adding the dependencies. And this actually makes it easy to actually set up all the Firebase SDKs inside your development environment. We also have the other one, which is the real-time database, Cloud Firestore, Vertex, AI in Firebase, and all the Firebase SDKs. So the only thing is, because I think depending on the app that you're building, at times you are not using all of this. So depending on which one that you're using, you can actually be able to come and then set up whichever that you are interested in. So for example, if we click the Crashlytics here and then the Get Started button, you can also be able to see the project is already connected, so we don't need to connect to Firebase again. And then it also shows the steps to add the Crashlytics plugin to your app. And lastly, how to test like a crash. One of the other improvements is if we go to, I think we have this button here, which is called App Quality Insights. So if you click that one, let me try to refresh last 24 hours and then refresh here. I will expand this and you can be able to see this is the crash that we replicated. You can be able to see all the details from the start trace, and you can be able to easily, so once you click this highlighted part in blue here, you can be able to see it takes you directly to the part in the code that is causing the crash, and also has this kind of star here just to inform you that this part is causing like a crash, and you can be able to easily check or fix the code. And then let me also show the same in console. So what this does is whenever you get crashes, you can actually open inside your development environment and also see what the issues are and be able to fix the issues on the go instead of actually having to switch back to the Firebase console and check the crashes and then go back to your development environment to fix the crash. So going to comment that out. And now share another screen. Yes, so again, if you go to our Firebase console project, you can be able to see this is the Firebase Kenya project. And if I refresh again and be able to see the crashes that my app is facing, you can be able to see we already have this one here. exactly shows you the details of the crash, the devices and operating system and all that. And down here, you also see a bunch of information about the exact crash. That is the stack trace, the same as we are seeing in the Android Studio. But now you can be able to see more details, and then you can actually copy this and now try to see which part is causing the crash. But this has been made easier. Inside your Android Studio, you can be able to browse all this. And this is the one that we just created right now. This is test crash 2, and you can be able to see the actual place that the crash is happening. And then still on the console, this is majorly how the console is. You have like you have the shortcuts. That is the most recent project that you've been using. And then we have like some product categories, because I said Firebase has a bunch of SDKs to help you. So inside each, once you expand, you can be able to see we have a bunch of them. One of them being authentication. That is, if you want to use Firebase authentication to allow access, to allow people to access your app, you can be able to see, you can be able to use authentication. We have database when you want to store items inside the database, and then a bunch of other things, storage, real-time database, machine learning, and all that. And then inside the run place, you can also be able to see we have the A/B testing. So A/B testing is mostly useful in scenarios where you have like two features and you want to, one, deploy both of them, and then be able to see which one of the two features, like as the name goes, we have a feature A and then we have feature B. As the name goes, you can be able to decide, deploy both of them and then to different sets of users, and over time be able to collect insights as to which feature users prefer more. And then if you want to do something to do with ads, there is the ad mob here. We also have app distribution, which I'm also going to maybe cover at length, especially in terms of trying to distribute test builds and all that. Crashlytics, which is the one that I was highlighting. Dynamic links, I think this one was deprecated a while ago, so wouldn't measure much on it. And then we have the messaging part here. I'm going to click this because, so messaging is when you are trying to build engagement kind of in your apps. So you can be able to use push notifications or in-app messaging. And the good thing about Firebase, you can be able to see inside this console, we have like how to get started, the documents and all that, which is already linked for you. And you can be able to click and then see how to actually get started. And then we have performance. So you can add this to be able to over time monitor the performance of your app. We have release monitoring. So if we click this release monitoring again, so this one, what it does is for every release that you do inside Firebase, it tries to get the version, and then depending on the crashes that your user are getting, it will be able to identify whether it's a healthy release or a bad release. So for example, we have released a 1.1 release of the app, and the crashes in the number of active users increases from, let's say, from this number reduces from 100 to, let's say, 80%. You'll be able to see a red warning here that the release is not a healthy one. And it also shows like a bit of analytics from the analytics library that I was showing you earlier on that we added. You can be able to see analytics, the active users, and also crash-free users and crash-free sessions. So I think these are two different ones. The first one means all the users that you have in your app, I think how many of them are having crashes. And then in terms of sessions, is every time a user opens the app is considered like as a session. So you might see the numbers varying here depending on the sessions or also depending on the number of active users. And again, you can also be able to see the top issues. I think this is the one that we were testing on early on. So it just highlights the number of crashes that have been happening and the number of users that have been impacted. So this is normally very helpful when you're trying to do releases for your Android apps because you can be able to actually monitor and then be able to identify issues before users actually start complaining. And then still in the run, we have another feature here called remote config. And I'm going to explain what remote config is. So remote config is where you'll be able to deploy variables or conditions that you want to change real time. So for example, we have this variable here, which is called show grid. It's a Boolean, and I want to either show a grid or a list view item, depending on this condition. The good thing is that once you change this value, automatically all the apps that you have will be able to consume the latest value. So that so think of it as if you want to do especially things like feature flagging, you want to display one feature on demand or disable it on demand. You can consider like using remote config as your default go-to solution, so that once you change the value here, all the apps will be able to consume the updated value and then react to that value on the app. I'm going to show you the use case of this once I go back to the project. And then we have the test lab. If we go back to the run category, we have the test lab. So test lab, let me expand the test lab category again. And if I click this one, so what test lab allows you is you can be able to run laboratory test or instrumentation test for your apps and be able to verify whether your apps are working correctly. So if you have a lot of UI tests in your app, you can be able to either upload this app, upload your app here, and then it will be able to run all the apps, all the tests, and then be able to give you like which tests have passed and which tests have failed. And additionally, you can be able to use this test lab on a CI environment to run your test automatically. And then we have the analytics bit. This is if you are very interested in just trying to know how your app is performing, how many users that we have. So Google Firebase automatically does that for you. And you can also be able to collect custom analytics depending on your app. So for example, I think this, it shows users over time and then active users again, and then the latest release and its status. If you need to act on something, this is where you can be able to see. And then stability and all that. Engagement. So this is, as I was mentioning, the messaging feature. You can be able to actually see how users of your app are actually engaging with the app. So if you send like a notification, how many people will be able to open that notification and so on. And then user retention is once someone has installed their app, let's say over a week, how many times do they come back to your app to open it and interact with their app again? And then the good thing about the analytics bit is that you can customize according to your needs, and you can collect as much info about your app as you can, and also information regarding like how people are using your app. Let's say they are in this screen, and then from that screen they perform certain actions. You can also be able to collect that kind of an information. And yeah, I think these other additional analytics thing that you can also be able to see. I'm going to switch back and then show you something else.
No questions so far.
Yes, and so back to Android Studio here. So I was saying something about remote config. So this is how you, let me enable it back. So one, you have to do like a bit of, the first thing you do is, we already have the library set up, same way as we did the setting up of the Crashlytics. And then you have to set up the minimum fetch interval, like, because you're trying to fetch the latest data from your app, at what intervals do you want to fetch? So you can increase this or reduce this depending on how frequently you change the variables that are in the remote config, and then just set the remote config settings for your remote config. And then the example I was showing here, we have this home screen. So if I can run it again, I'll just re-enable it here. So if you go to this home screen code here, so we have the show grid here. And when, if it's true, we just show like a lazy vertical grid. This means that you'll have items in columns. And then if it's false, you just show like a list item. And then I think that is, if you run the app again, as it's running, you can be able to see how you fetch that variable is you come here. So you can be able to see by default, it's a list. And then you can be able to come here and then show grid. Let me expand this. So you get your remote config instance and then get a Boolean, which is like a defined method inside the remote config SDK, and then call the variable that you defined inside your remote config in the Firebase console. And if we run it again, so if you run it again, since it's false on remote config, it will still show the list. But once you go and then change it back, you can be able to see it will automatically change. It will automatically change to lazy vertical grid without you having to do any change. So that is the benefit that it offers you. So you have an app that is already deployed. So you can automatically do changes on the fly without having to redeploy the app again. So anytime you change this variable on remote config, the app will come and then render whichever view that is supposed to be rendered. And then I think I've seen a question. Yes, I think, let me, so this is where you define all the dependencies. So you start with the versions. So you can be able to see, like, as I said, I'm using like the Firebase bill of materials because we have like a lot of Firebase dependencies. So the bill of materials easily helps you to actually define one version to be used by all your Firebase SDKs. And then inside this library section, you define all the libraries that you're going to use, all your Firebase libraries that you're going to use. So one, this is the BOM, you have to define it, and then analytics, Crashlytics, and then remote config, and then Firebase UI. And then for Crashlytics specifically, one thing that you have to do is you also have to set up the Crashlytics plugin and also the Google Services plugin, because the Firebase is a product by Google, so you have to, it uses the Google Services plugin to be able to enable those services inside your app. So if you come to the project level Gradle file, you can be able to see that already we have enabled the Crashlytics plugin, and also we have listed the Google services. We apply by force because you don't want to apply in all the projects or sub-projects of this project. So if you come to the module app, this is where now you apply the Crashlytics and the Google services. And then on top of this, you come here and then add all their dependencies. So we have the bill of materials, we have the analytics, and we have the crashlytics. So you have to define it in the libsot version and also define it in the build Gradle file. But since this setup is like a bit of a custom one and using version catalog, if you go to this assistant here that I was referring to, it gives you like a step-by-step process of how to add all these dependencies in the various places and according to your app setup. Yes, I think I was explaining the remote config. So anytime you change this variable inside your remote config, it will automatically be fetched and your UI will be updated depending on the value that you had set. And I think there is like a lot of use cases for such scenarios because you have, in case you want to change things on the fly or you want to show some features on the fly or enable them, disable them without you having to deploy like a new version of your app. I think remote config normally helps you a lot and it can shine in such scenarios. Then I mentioned about the test lab and app distribution. So I'm going to explain a bit about app distribution. So you have your application and you want to actually deploy it to, so you want to share internally with your team, let's say the engineering team or the product team, for them to be able to test your application. That is where we have the app distribution. Let me show, I will show it on the console so that I can also explain some of the things that you can do with app distribution. So what app distribution does is for teams in a company or if you have like a group of friends and you want to test your application and you haven't actually deployed it to Play Store, you come and then upload, you can either upload it here, drag and drop an APK or app bundle to be able to distribute it. And then you can be able to see, I already have like one release, which has release notes and the number of people invited, downloaded, and all that. So this helps you to easily distribute your APKs or AAB without actually having to maybe send the APK over Google Drive or over WhatsApp or Slack and all that. So you can actually create a group of testers, like you can be able to see here, and then you can add more groups and all that. And then each group, once you do a release, they'll be able to be notified that, hey, we have like a new app release. Can you go and download and then test it? So I normally find this very helpful, especially for distributing test builds, or if you're working on a feature that is yet to be released on Play Store, you can use app distribution to share the APK with the testers and then get feedback. And then once you have feedback, you can be able to share that feedback with, you can be able to act on that feedback and then finalize on the build and then deploy it to Play Store. And the good thing, especially if you're using CI/CD, you can be able to actually automate this so that every time you create a PR, you can be able to deploy the same application to app distribution and be able to get feedback. So let me show you that setup in a bit. So if you go to project level, yeah, so I have this CI/CD file. This is a sample GitHub Action CI/CD file, which does a bunch of things. It runs on Ubuntu environment, and then setting up Gradle stuff. And then after you set up Gradle stuff, you come and then set up JDK, which is some of the things that you do in your CI environment. But the most thing I'm interested in, apart from setting up, is how can we actually run our app and then share that build to Firebase app distribution. So this step actually builds the app and then generates like an APK for you, which you can be able to use that APK to deploy. And then we have this action by this person here. So it's called Firebase distribution GitHub action. So it means you can reuse this action if you want to embed the the Firebase distribution inside your app. And then you have to specify your app ID. So this you do in the secrets and variables inside your project in GitHub, and then the service account. And then remember when we were talking about app distribution, you can decide to distribute to groups. So I have this group called initial, and then this is the file. So the file actually points to the app that you want to upload to Firebase app distribution. And then if you have some release notes that will be added to Firebase release notes, you can also, this is where you get them. So when you run this on GitHub, it automatically builds your app and then deploys that to Firebase. And it makes your work easier because instead of actually having to do it locally and then upload the APK somewhere and then share the link, you actually automate this, and then on every PR, you can be able to deploy Firebase app distribution, and testers can also be able to access that because all the people in this group will be notified that, hey, we have a new Firebase build that is ready for testing. I can see we have a question. So does the analytics part in Firebase show analysis for an app already in place? So you don't have to upload your app to Firebase because this one, this is the project I created today, just playing around with some Firebase stuff. And you can already you can be able to see that it shows the analytics for you, the current number of users, and also the crashes that you are facing. So you don't have to have an active app on Play Store. So long as you do the setup correctly, you'll be able to actually see the analytics real time. And then the other, before I move away from GitHub actions, I mentioned about the test lab, which is also like another way that you can automate some of these things, especially testing. So you can also be able to, on your CI pipelines, you can also be able to push a build to Firebase Test Lab and then get it tested, and especially if you are running a lot of instrumentation tests, you can be able to run them on the test lab and then get the results and then add it as a step in your CI. And every time you create an app or every time you push to, let's say, the main branch, you can be able to do the same. Again, this is the setup bit. I'm not going to focus on that, but just showing you. So here you get a service account. I think service accounts, these are things that you use to actually enable like the CI/CD pipelines to have the permissions to run that project. And then you do the authentication, and then you build the app again. And then you can be able to see this time you are building like an Android tests APK. And then once you build that, you can be able to run that on Firebase Test Lab, because we have like a CLI environment that gcloud exposes, so that you can be able to now run this command. So you can be able to see this is the command here, and then the type of the test that you're running is the instrumentation. So this normally happens if you have like a lot of Android tests inside your Android test directory. You can be able to run all those instrumentation tests inside your test lab. and then you select the app, and then again you select the test application. You also specify the device. So in this case, the test is running on a Pixel 2, and then the version is 30, and some other configurations like orientation and the language. And lastly, you specify the timeout. So what this does, every time you create a PR, it will run the test in Firebase Test Lab and then just verify everything is working correctly. And if they are passing, you can now actually be able to either merge the PR or deploy the PR. And if I go back to my test lab, so that you can be able to see. So if I go, you can be able to see there is this test here. It normally gives like this random ID. And then if you come to the test, you can be able to see the device and then the level. And if you click, you can actually go to, because this one didn't have any tests, so that's why you can't be able to click anything or go anywhere to see any details. But if you click on that one, you can be able to come here and then, so what it does, it runs your app and then you can be able to see this is the time that the tests took. And then we have the logs in case you have any logs on your test. I think this normally takes, but you can be able to see it's similar as you're running your app, the logs that you normally see, and then you can be able to see what is happening. And this is normally helpful if your tests are failing. And then if you go to screenshots, so because our app is like a very empty app, so this I just did this after creating the project, so you can be able to see we have a bunch of screenshots, and then this is hello Android. And it takes a lot of screenshots as it's running your tests. So if you have like a lot of screens, you'll be able to see all your screens here, and then be able to see how exactly the test was. The other thing is we have like a video. As it's running the test, you can be able to see, if we play this video, so you can be able to see how it runs the app and then goes to this screen. That you can also be able to see like a yellow thing as it tries to click all through your app and then see if there is anything or any action inside your app that is supposed to be happening. And then if you go to performance again, you can be able to see the reports of the performance of your app. So if there is any issues, I think you can, so you can be able to see, it does like a land of, it does a bunch of clicks here and there to be able to see if your app is responsive and what time it takes for your app to fully load. So you can be able to see this is what it was doing, and then total CPU usage, total memory usage, and all that. And also we have the accessibility bit. The accessibility bit, because we have a very simple app, as you've seen from the screenshot, it just displays one text. But if you have like a very, a wide, if you have like a lot of screens here, you can be able to see accessibility reports and just, for example, if your buttons are not clear, if the padding is off, if the contrast is not good and all that, it lists all those issues here so that you can be able to see them and possibly address them. And I think the test lab and app distribution, I think I find them to be like very useful, especially in a day-to-day kind of setup as a developer, because you can, once you automate them, as I've shown you from the GitHub actions, they'll be running every time you create a PR, it will go through this this step and then run the test for you and potentially identify issues for you before you release the app. So I think I normally try to, for all the projects that I have, just trying to set up the test lab to run all the UI tests for me every time I do like a PR. And then app distribution, as I said, when I want to distribute my app to internally, and I don't. So for example, you are working on the app and it's not yet ready for releasing. So you can just come and then upload to Firebase, and then people can be able to actually access it via their email. And then the other cool thing that they added on this Firebase on app distribution is that, again, you can also automate testing for it. So there is the testers, release notes, and then feedback, but there is this new tab. I think it's already in beta, so currently not in production. But once you click here, you can be able to run tests, and you can be able to see what this does is it runs the test for you in a device, and then we'll see the results and then probably discuss the same. Let me refresh and see if the so it has already done the automated testing, and then if you go to view test results, it's still pending. So as it's running the test, there's also some of the other features that you can take advantage of as a Android developer. And the other one was if you go to build, and then we have authentication. So the other thing is every SDK inside Firebase, it normally has the get started, all the documentation are very linked. And I think from my experience using Firebase product, they're normally well documented, and it's easy for you to just follow along with their documentation and be able to get yourself set up. So for example, if I click this one here, so so authentication is in cases where you don't have like a backend developer and you want to have a way for people to access your app, or a way to just lock some content behind an authentication. So Firebase provides a couple of them. So we have the native ones, email and password, phone, and then anonymous. So I think in cases where you want to provide like anonymous login to your app, this is the option that you can use. And then we have like additional providers. These mostly are the social ones like Google, Facebook, Play Games, and Apple, GitHub, and all that. And then custom ones like OpenID and this other one. So this, mostly the custom ones is when you want like a bit of flexibility, because the additional ones and the native one, I think once you place like that button like for logging with Google, you just call the library and then it does the magic for you. And you can also add multi-factor authentication. And the only thing you need to do is, for example, for phone, if you come to phone, you can be able to enable it. Let me see if it's enabled, because you have to enable each and every one of it. So if you click phone and then, yeah, I think it's right here. Once you enable it, that's it. And then once you enable it, what it does for you, it has that UI where you can actually log in, and then I'll just show you how it is. But you can choose depending on which one that you want. We have the phone, we have the email, we have like the anonymous, or if you want other methods like the Google, Facebook, and all that. And each and every user that you add will be seen in this kind of UI. Let us see if the app distribution automated test did complete. Yeah, I think it's still pending. So I'll go back to, I will share my Android Studio again. For the multi-factor authentication, I think I haven't tried it with the Google Authenticator app because I mostly use, if we go back to authentication right here, I've mostly used the phone one, which is normally way easy for you to set up all the email password kind of combination. But again, if you go, I think it hides all the other. Also, if you go to add new provider, and then you can be able to see. So you also have to upgrade because I'm on the free plan. If you check at the very bottom here, I'm on the free plan. So if you want to use like the other authenticator apps, you can be able to upgrade and then be able to see how you can set those up. And then, so apart from also the authentication bit, if you go back to this build section, I was mentioning we have the Firestore database. So let's try to explore and then see what we can do with the Firestore database. So we have the Cloud Firestore, which you can use to actually for real-time updates. And then it's a database where you can store your things in a key value kind of pair situation. So if we create the database and then you have to create ID and then the rules. So rules is to prevent anyone from actually using your database or exhausting your quotas, and then the location. So you can choose the location. We have the South Africa one, which was recently launched. And then once we go to next, and then these are the rules. So we have the production mode or test mode. So by test mode, you allow, I think, all the users to read and write, which is kind of dangerous, especially if you don't want to run into cost issues, because if you allow everyone to read and write, basically someone can just come and then read and write into your database. And then once you create that, so it takes a minute to just create your Firestore database. And the good thing with Firestore is if you're looking for something that is real time, so if you want to update data and then be able to see those changes as immediately on your app, this is your go-to solution. And then the other thing is once you, like Firestore works offline, so in case you need to maintain that data inside your app, you can also be able to use Firestore. It works in both ways. It stores the data locally in your app, and every time you have an update, it will ensure that your data is stored. And how Firestore, it normally stores things in kind of collections. So we can, let's say, users to start with. And then inside users, you create a document. Let's say, I'll just say test and then call this name and then Firebase. And then you can add as many fields as you want. And then in the fields, you can also be able to specify different types. You can be able to see we have a string, we have a number, Boolean, map, array, geopoint, and then reference, determining on the type of data that you want. And then once you save, so you can be able to see we have these users, and then this is a test document. So Firestore is normally, you have a collection, and then inside a collection, you have documents, and then each document has its own fields. So we have email, password. So you can come here and then you can add more documents here. There's two different fields or different variables, and then just save. And I think it's depending on the structure, you have to sit down and then structure your database, because Firestore is no SQL. So you don't actually write any SQL queries. You just save in terms of collection and documents. And then inside like a document, you can be able to add a collection. So I think the structure here is normally a bit complicated, but I think for now, just know you can have collections and documents. And then inside your app, you can just get the users collection and then fetch all the documents in that users. And what it does is every time you have an update here, or every time you add a document, you can be able to read it inside your app or get that update. And you get the advantage that you can also get that offline capability out of the box. I think I can see a question from Pascal, whether you can use Firestore as an alternative to Room. Not entirely, because Firestore comes with the offline storage like as a out of the box. So in case once you use Firestore, you don't actually need to use Room. But if you have like a use case where you need to do more things with offline storage, because you actually don't control how data is saved or how data is updated on Firestore. It does it automatically by the SDK. So once you need like a bit of customized things, that's when you go to use Room. And that is, so we have Firestore. I'm trying to just walk through all the products that you can use as especially on the Android side of things. And then we have the storage bit. So we have the database where you can store records, but in case you have like large files like images, audio, and video, that's why you use this Firebase storage. So you can just upload them here, and then you'll be able to actually read them from this storage. The only thing I have to say is if you go to pricing, which I think you have to consider, and let me go to this comparison. So you can be able to see the pricing plans, the store data, you have like a limit of 1 GB for the free plan. I think this is the free plan, yeah. And then 10 GB per month. Writes, this is 20K writes per day. And then the reads is 50K per day. So as you are using the Firebase products, especially on the free plan, I think there is the pricing bit. So you have to especially think about it very well. If it's something you actually need to store on either storage or Firestore, do you actually need that? Because as you are, in case you have like a, if you as your app grows, this limit is very easy to hit in a day because it's 20K writes. So every time you update the database, you get the, it counts to the limits that you have. And then you have cloud storage again, 5 GB, 1 GB, and all that. And then Crashlytics, I think they don't have any limits. The hosting bit, I think this is mostly for web applications. We also have the Firebase ML in case you want to do like text recognitions and all that. It's also enabled. We have the real-time database, which was like a predecessor from, which was the very first one before Firestore came in. It also has its limits here, and then remote config, no cost at all. And then we have test lab, which is the one that I was trying to explain. Because test lab, I think as we were seeing, all those devices, they're normally virtual ones or physical device. So right now you can actually, I'll actually showcase that one. You can actually use a physical device that is from test lab and then run the test. But on the free tier, you have like 10 tests per day or 5 tests per day. If you exceed that, you'll start paying. And then we have the device streaming and then all the other things. So as you're building your app with Firebase, you have to be very keen on the pricing and then be able to go back on the drawing board and then see, do I actually need this, or how can I customize my app to use the lower limits or not to exceed the limits. But for, I think the ones that I was mentioning mostly, A/B testing, you don't have a cost. Analytics, you don't have a cost. App distribution, no cost. And then Crashlytics, again, no cost. And then Test Lab, remote config, no cost. Test Lab, I think, so what you do is, if you have like the Test Lab running on your CI/CD pipelines, so what you do is, if you limit the number of PRs, or you can actually make it run only when the PR is merged on the main branch, so that, because if you only merge like twice a day, you still are within the limit, or within 10, or by 10 times, it means that you have run the your APK on TestLab 10 times a day. So there's some things that you can consider, and how you can also customize your everything to be able to ensure that you don't hit the limits. Okay, and then, so we have the storage, and then the other ones, I think we've already discussed. We also have the machine learning bit, and then it has like a very nice documentation here. So there is a bunch of things that you can do here. We have text recognition, we have image labeling, face detection, object detection, all this AI stuff. So for example, the face detection, if you are building like an application that has to, a person has to take their selfie before proceeding, you can be able to detect like some of the face features. Like if you just open this documentation, and then you can be able to see facial expressions, like if the person's smiling or not, and then facial features like eyes, ears, cheeks, nose, mouth, and all that. And the good thing is it does for you out of the box, so you can actually come and then use any of these features to enrich your app. We have the text recognition, and then smart reply. So for example, if you want to automatically reply to someone, you can do the same. On device translation and all that. And okay, that is about machine learning. I think what I think I decided to do for this first session is just try to walk through this, and then we'll arrange with the organizers to deep dive in each one of these, because as you can see, each one of it has its own, it's like an SDK on its own, and it's very difficult to actually, not difficult, the session will be maybe like a whole day trying to actually have all these things demonstrated inside your app. But mostly it's just to walk through them and then see how you can be able to use them. And then from this, we can actually now, let's say, build an app for face detection using these libraries, and then consecutive section building upon all those other things. I'm going to, let me see if the app distribution that we were checking has already finished. So you can be able to see, this is a release that I did via CI. And you can be able to see we have, it has passed. This is the automated one. It has like a green robot kind of thing. And then if I go to the results, test issues, no issues were found. And then again, we have the screenshots. So similar to the test lab, you can be able to see all your screenshots, and it takes a bunch of them under different situations to ensure that it catches all your issues. And then there is a video. So what this does is, I think it's helping you, apart from people who are going to test your app and give feedback, you can also automate these things by yourself, and then try to catch some of these things early on, instead of just waiting for people to catch them, or actually for your users to catch them. And the good thing, as I was explaining, the app distribution and the test lab, you can actually add them into your CI pipelines to automate them such that you don't have to think about them in the future again. You just set them once, and then every time you create a PR, I think it will do the testing, identify any issues, and then you also get emails in case there is any issues. And yeah, another question from Pascal, can you explain more on remote config? So let me go back to sharing my screen. I'll share my ID. So I was explaining about the authentication bit, and we also have it also has like the Firebase UI. I'll show you how you add that. So let me, okay, let me stop presenting. Yeah, so yes. So we have this phone number UI, which is from the Firebase UI library. It gives you this custom user interface that you can use. And then you can just enter your phone number. And then if you do the verify, it does the automatic validations for you if it's a valid phone number or not. And then if it's a valid phone number, you can be able to get the OTP verification. And this is outside the box. And then it will do the verification for you and all that. And let me show you the code to do that. So if you go back to login here, I have this login activity, and again, if I go to my libs.version file, we have the Firebase UI. So for most of the products that I was showing you, if you go to the Firebase UI library, it has like a for authentication already pre-built UI for you, so that you don't have to build like UIs from the scratch. Like for Google sign in, Facebook sign in, Twitter sign in, and all that. And this is the latest version, and then you define the dependencies as shown here. And then inside your app Gradle file, you just add the Firebase UI.auth. And then this is how now you actually write the login part. So you can be able to see one, you get the list of providers. That is, as we were seeing in the console, we have email, we have phone, and all that. And then you can add as many as you want. And then secondly, just create like a sign-in intent by AudUI. So this is where you set the intent builder and then set the available providers from this list. So in short, you're trying to say that I want to create like a sign-in intent that only has these providers. You can add as many to this list as possible. But for now, I just used the phone builder and then launch the intent so that it can actually show that sign-in UI. And then this is the register activity for result. So once you sign in, and your result will be here, and then you can be able to see whether it was a successful login or not. And then if let's try to customize this, and you see how the UI is out of. And then before I forget, internet. So if I run my app, I'll be able to run and then try to explain more about remote config. So remote config, it's an SDK by Firebase, which allows you to define variables that quickly change. And once they change, all your apps will be notified of the change without you having to update the application. Okay, so we have an issue. So remote config use cases is as the one I was showing you. If you want to enable features on the fly or disable them on the fly, you can use remote config, because once you change that variable on Firebase, all the places that you are using it will be able to be updated. So I think we still, let us see if we can be able to debug this. Just have content. Just so I think we have some issues. And then if we run this again, yeah, but okay, I'll just try to explain without the UI bit. But again, if you need more providers here, you can just come here and then add the providers on the fly. You can be able to see email builder. Whichever one that you want, you can be able to add them and then they'll be able to be displayed on the UI. I'll try to separately fix that so that by the end of this call, we can be able to see how it looks like. And then on the remote config bit, just to showcase how you can use that in code. So you get the instance of the SDK, which is Firebase remote config SDK. And then my use case was we have like this home screen that either you can show items in a grid or in a single list. And then I have this, so I get the remote config instance and then get the boolean, which is called show grid. And then inside this home screen, this is in Jetpack Compose, you can be able to see if the variable is true, just show like a grid view. And then if it's false, just show items in a list. And then if I undo the changes here and then just run the app, if you run the app again, so you can see by default it's a list. And then what you do now, assuming this app will be deployed, hopefully, let me see if that works. Because you can also be able to see the logs. So I think you can be able to see for remote config, we have no value of type boolean exists for parameter key show grid. So if I go back to my console, so assuming everything is already defined on the app, and then we go back to console. And we go to remote config. And then you can be able to see we have this show grid variable here. And then right now it's true. And then I can be able to, it also shows some nice analytics. Let me see if we can be able to see. So if you scroll here, you can be able to see the analytics and then okay, so I actually hadn't rolled out this parameter. So let me cancel that. But if you come here, you can be able to now, if you want to change the value here, I'll update it to false and then save. And you can be able to see once you change any variable inside remote config, it prompts you to update the changes. And then once you publish, the changes, now all the apps they can be able to consume and then see the value as false and then update the UI. If it's true, they'll also update the UI. So you can use it to actually control configurations or behaviors or UI inside your app that you want to do without having to necessarily update the app. So I hope the remote config is way clearer now. So for now, I think we can take questions. And as I said, we'll try and plan more sessions to now expand on the different ones and also showcase more scenarios that you can use the different Firebase SDKs. Today was just to highlight and then showcase, especially the test lab, the app distribution, crash analytics, and also how you can be able to do all that inside Android Studio. So opening this up for questions. Or if anything wasn't clear. Yeah, so I think I'm going to give like 5 more minutes. If we have no questions, we can call it a night and then see you on the next one. So you can ask any question on the chat or any clarification in case there is an SDK that wasn't clear. Good question, especially on the test lab. Let me share like an actual project that has the devices. Let me see if my so I'll go back to sharing my Android Studio and then showcase. So there is this Firebase icon on the devices where you can be able to select some of the device models. And then I'll just select the project. And then it quickly shows you the usage statistics and all that so that you can know instead of overusing and then being charged. And I think you can be able to see that we have, so if I expand this here and then try to expand. Yeah, so this is a remote device, remote device. So I was explaining, so Test Lab allows you to actually, so we have remote devices. Those are emulators hosted in the cloud. We have virtual devices. They are actually like real Android devices that you can actually use. And so if you go here, let me confirm, and then you can add. So you can either create a virtual device or a remote device. So if I select a remote device, so you can see these are all the, actually it's not, it is not visible because it's a pop-up. So I'll just go on the console to be able to see that. So if you go to Test Lab again, And then if you can run either robotic and then instrumentation. So you can select, this will, actually, this is what you want to see. So from the very top, you can be able to see the catalog of devices. And then, so we have a Pixel 5. We also have some generic phones here, Galaxy and all that. I think we normally have a lot of Samsung phones, Lenovo Tab and all that. So you just come and then select. We have Redmi, we have Vivo, XQ and all that. And if you can't find a device from this list, you can be able to actually request for one. And the good thing right now is that I'll try to show you on the, so you can just, depending on which, the API level that you want and the device that you want, because probably there is some, let's say you have a crash that you've seen on a Pixel 5. So you can just come and then run on that Pixel. If you want to test on other API levels, let's say 26, 28, you can also come and then test on that. It gives you that, because as an Android developer, at times you might not have all, you can see we have a lot of devices here. You might not have all these devices at your disposal, available for you. So what you can do is you can actually just come and then select one, and then run the test, and then be able to see how best your app works on such devices. And then the good thing is, especially for test lab, a way to escape this limit is you can actually set the UI test to run probably once every night, so that you don't limit the number of PRs that people create, because you have like a hard limit of 10 tests per day. So you can just allow people to create PRs, merge to master, and then inside your CI pipeline, just set it to run nightly, so that every night you have a pipeline action that deploys the test APK to test lab, then run the test, and then confirm if everything is working. If it's not working, you can also send those reports to either Slack notification, email, and all that, so that you can be able to stay within the limits. And then actually what they did, so we have these devices which are available on console, but right now I'm trying to, there is a setup I'm trying to connect, because you can actually now request for a physical device and then be able to run tests on a physical device, because we have an emulator, which is, the ones that are on console are kind of emulators, but we now have actual physical devices. And I'm going to just show you one. So we have that one. Yes, let me just try to connect to one physical device, and then we can be able to see what we have. I think it's, yeah. So you can be able to see we have this Oppo. This is like a remote device, but this one will be, so if you run it, so you can be able to see here, it reserving a device. So you actually get like this device for 15 minutes, and you can be able to run your app inside this device and be able to run all your tests. So let the device boot so that you can be able to see. The only thing that you have to be aware of these physical devices is they're actually very costly. So if you are on especially a company that is pay as you go plan, you have to limit your usages so that you can actually not find a lot of billing due to these physical devices. So you can be able to see this is an actual phone now, an Oppo phone. And then camera, I think they try to limit camera and all that, but let's see. Yeah, because you actually don't have an actual camera, but you can just take a black photo and all that. But you can be able to see all the other apps. It's very similar to an actual device. So you can run your app here. So if I run, you can run your app here and then see how the look and feel feels on a physical device. And in case you have issues on maybe let's say specific devices, you can actually do it. Just run and then see. So this is an actual device. And if you go to settings, you can be able to see everything that you see in a Android device is actually here. So that's why I think it's a very useful thing, especially if you're trying to test your app on different devices that you don't have available. I think even 15 minutes just trying to run your app through such a device can be very helpful for you. So, and as I highlighted, most of these things are free up to certain limits. So when you're developing, I think, or when you have an app that is in development stage and not in like having a bunch of users, you can be able to take advantage of these SDKs and tools to improve and do some of the things in your app, and then just make your life as a developer easier. So I think that is it for me, unless we have any other question. Yes, but since we don't have any other question, to summarize is that I think Firebase has like a lot of tools, and there was a specific reason I specialize on app distribution and also Firebase Test Lab, just to showcase how you can make your app as a developer easy and how you can take advantage of the tools that Firebase offers to test your apps and then find some common accessibility issues, debug issues on those, and actually distribute your app, because I find a lot of people trying to either distribute their apps via APKs or just sharing a link where the app is in Google Drive, whereas you can take advantage of all these tools. And as I said, if you have a small app or if you're actually using some of these developer tools, some of them have no cost as we were checking on the pricing. So you can actually take advantage and enrich your app with these SDKs and then make your life way easier, and then try to get analytics, insights, and all that all in one place. The beauty of everything is that all these tools are in Firebase. So once you go to console, you can be able to see how your app is performing, the test for your app, and all that in one place. So that is it. In case you have probably follow-up questions or a concept was not clear in this call, you can reach out to me on any socials. I think Harun Ongereka is normally my name and my handle in all the social media platforms. And thank you so much for the organizers for hosting me and for the audience for the engaging questions.